Hello. I want to talk to you a little bit about a really fundamental movement pattern or a way of moving that has such a gigantic impact on the health of our backs. Over the past week, I've had a couple of new low back patients, and I found myself saying the same thing to both of them. I recognize I'm getting to the age where I repeat myself a lot, but these repetitions were intentional, and they were intentional for a reason. And what I said to him is I was explaining all the different pieces of what it was going to take to make them better, including how to do a hip hinge properly. And I said to both of them, if God spoke to me and said, you can do one thing, but one thing only to help this person, I would pick teaching you how to do a hip hinge. And that's how incredibly important it is because I was choosing that over the adjustment to their spine, which they needed, which is very, very, very important. But a spine, when normally aligned, looks like this. Oh boy, let me try and looks like this. So the low back curves in like this. The mid back curves back the other way, and the neck curves in this way. In this alignment, with that low back curved in, these joints in the low back interlock and become stable. The discs are protected because the pressure on the disc is pushing their central part that way. The central part of the disc, which is where the problem comes from, and that central part oozes out, is never going to get in trouble that way. It only gets in trouble that way. So when we maintain this curve, we're protecting our disc and we're creating a stable low back. When we do this, all of that reverses. We've now destabilized our back by losing that interlocking that these vertebrae would have if we were in the correct alignment. And more important than that, we now start to push that central part of our disc back this way, where it can create all kinds of trouble. And then the more weight we put out here, if say, for example, we're bent forward and we're holding something like that, the more weight we put out here, the worse we're making that whole thing. And this all comes down to how we bend. And I hope I'm going to be able to let you see this a little bit on the video here. But when we bend correctly, the back stays straight. In other words, the bend takes place like this. The spine doesn't move. The movement all takes place here at the hip. Hence the name a hip hinge, because we're learning to hinge from the hip. What we don't want is this movement where the back bends and the hip doesn't. So I encourage you to look at a couple of our other videos. We have a video on the hip hinge, and then we also have one on lumbar spine fundamental concepts. The lumbar spine fundamental concepts one expands on this idea of and gives you a little bit more detail about how these different positions affect your discs. And the hip hinge one just gives you more detail on how to actually do the movement.